making lawyer salary is going to leave you objectively poor. I don't think this video needs an intro because money is always one of the top things on everybody's mind, and that's probably why you're here. Whether you're considering becoming a lawyer in Canada, whether you are a lawyer and you're just trying to gauge if you're getting compensated fairly, or your kid's a lawyer, whatever the case may be, welcome to this video. Today we're going to talk about what average salaries look like in 2025 for a lawyer in Canada. Who am I to talk about that? Well, like I said, welcome. My name is Pam. I am a lawyer myself, practicing law in Canada with my own law firm on top of that. So despite having articled on Bay Street, despite having been top of class in my law schools, despite having reached the conventional heights there are to the process by way of working for others, I have the immeasurable extra life experience of having my own law firm and knowing not just the practice of law or how to tend to a certain section within a pleading that somebody told me to do. I have the business side of law down as well. So let's talk about it because there's a lot of mystery still going on. Now, when it comes to how lawyers are compensated in Canada, I honestly think some of it will be fairly surprising, and overall this video is going to trend quite low. I know that incomes fluctuate. I have heard stories, from example, of colleagues about, the glory days before 2008. The paid dinners, the paid limos, the paid this, the paid that. Those days are gone. And they're going to get even more goner as time goes, especially in the short-term future with everything going on in the global economy. That being said, law is an income where I feel the appetite from the practitioner is sufficiently high, given by a lot of struggle that practitioners are going through. So if you're coming like I was, I'm the first lawyer I ever knew. So imagine how well connected I was, honey, before going into law school. If that's your background, you're going to input this, extra bark into the system. Pay up. I invested to be here. Pay up. If you are on the other side, which depending on what school you go to, in some schools it feels like this is like more than half of the crowd there, where it is, daddy's connections taking us there, or mommy's, then you're still gonna want to get that salary pushed up, up, up in terms of year after year, because you're thinking, pay me. So no matter what perspective you're bringing, at the end of the day, the lawyers are going to be a crowd that's advocating for their pay, because if we're not advocating for ourselves, then how are we in the business of advocating for others for a living? With that aside, okay, let's talk about it. The numbers here, by the way, and this is not like a big fat secret. This is, can you see on the screen there? Maybe it's a little blurry, but I'll tell you what I'm looking at. This is the ZSA Salary Guide. This is a fairly well-reputed publication. I think it's the only one that is as comprehensive as it is in terms of sharing numbers with you. And the ZSA Guide publishes not just the in-firm setting, so the more conventional setting in terms of large, medium, and small firms, but also they have had in recent years like that in-house info as well. Let's look at it. If you see me looking down, you know what I'm looking at. So in Toronto, for example, ZSA tells us that in 2025, the average first-year practitioner at a small law firm made $90,000 a year, at a medium law firm $110,000, and at a large firm $135,000. If you're watching from the US, honey, these are Canadian dollars. Although there are some law firms in Canada, like a handful of them, that are New York-based law firms, therefore they still pay even their Canadian practitioners in USD. Get you one of those if you can, and of course if you're comfortable with the culture that comes in a setting like that. No comment. Now, so we talked about first-year numbers. Okay, let's go down a little bit more. What about 5-year numbers? At a small firm, ZSA tells us, an average of 140, an average of 172 at the mid-size, and an average of 230 at a large firm. Now, as we go down here, the numbers are fairly comparable in Montreal, and I'm just, God gave us the ability to scroll. I'm just scrolling. The numbers are fairly similar in Montreal. They're a little bit lower in Calgary. For example, a first-year practitioner at a small firm here is said to make 85, whereas it was 90 in Toronto. But overall the same. And when it comes to Vancouver, small firm data there, they're saying varies. So this whole column is empty. And then mid-firm for a first year, 115, at a medium firm, 115, at a large firm, at the 5-year mark, 160 at a medium firm, 175,000 at a large firm. These numbers, and buckle up, honey, these numbers, I think, are crazy low numbers. And obviously I'm not commenting here within this comment would not apply to any one specific, law, society, or jurisdiction. So it's a fairly safe comment to make. These are national averages. And I'm not, again, commenting specifics on anyone. These are crazy low numbers. After taxes, let's take the 90,000 example of a first-year practitioner in Toronto. After taxes, and this is somebody, law is like one of the top most educated professions out there. You have to invest a lot into the system. And understand, life is about perspective, right? As I talk about in my luxury lifestyle channel, which I'll link down below, to somebody, I mentioned in terms of the purview of luxury, to somebody luxury in Flint, Michigan is going to be clean drinking water. To somebody else in Monte Carlo, luxury might be a one-of-one Bugatti. Perspective. So if you're making like minimum wage prior to going to law school, and there's nothing wrong with that, okay, 90,000 a year for a starting salary might seem great. Break it down. 90,000 a year is going to look, take home roughly, it's been a while since I made that little, keeping it honest, 90,000 a year is going to look like around 4,000 take home, okay? I don't know, it might be a high 3, might be a low 4. Roughly, it's around 4,000 a month cash in your pocket. Renting isn't, like, I don't know a single person renting for 2 these days. Renting is pushing upwards of 3 for a minimum 1 to 2 bedroom, like in a clean, safe part of Toronto. So you as a lawyer just spend 75% of your paycheck on housing. And by the way, and we're not going into the mortgages because I don't know anybody that could get a mortgage for under 5,000 these days in a quasi-safe space, neighborhood. On the renting scenario, again, if Zoran Mamdani rents, maybe, we could rent as a lawyer, it's okay still. But you're looking at, you just spent 75% of your income, take-home income, on rent. $1,000 is now left for you for food, for Law Pro, for insurance, for Law Society fees, which if you're in the small firm setting, whose numbers I'm going on, most small firms that I know do not cover those fees for you. You're covering them yourself. Car insurance, vacations, mental flossing by way of, a new shirt here and there, a new restaurant, trying it out, a new movie, whatever your go-to is for fun, right? Keep it clean though. So at the end of the day, making, becoming like this grandiose, woohoo, I'm a lawyer, in a big city like Toronto, and you are going to be conservative. Like, I don't know how you would not run a financial deficit every month. Now, what could help here? Well, if there's somebody else in the house paying bills with you. But that should not be necessary. That should not be the case. People are choosing, singledom more and more these days. I'm not going to comment on what kind of choice that is. I don't think this video is the place for that. But factually, there are more single people than ever. Who the hell can afford to live on this salary? What about your monthly debt payments if you didn't come from daddy's connections? Which if you did, chances are you wouldn't be at the small firm. Daddy would have put you up at a larger institution. Making lawyer salary is going to leave you objectively poor. You will have no money at the end of the month. And conservatively, I don't know how you wouldn't be dipping into debt every month to make ends meet. Okay, well, Pam, that was the small firm setting. What about the large firm? A first year is making $135,000. Now, taxes in Canada are proportional. So if a first year at a small firm with 90 is bringing home around 4-ish a month, at 135, the delta between that is 45,000 a year. So you would, assume it's like an extra 4 or 5 a month. No, at 135, they might be bringing home around 6-ish. I think it'd be crazy if they're bringing home 7, but around 6-ish. So the guy at 135 at a large law firm where they're going to be squeezed much more for billables, impact on lifestyle will be much greater, is going to maybe be lucky to afford food and rent and car insurance and gas for the month. Lucky at the large law firm. And that's Toronto, and some markets are crazy less. Like on the East Coast, which I'm surprised the CSA guide I'm looking at doesn't include those salaries. On the East Coast, it's not uncommon, even at like prestigious firms, to see lawyers starting at 45 to 55 a year before tax. Cost of living is not necessarily lower down there or out there, especially when you're looking at places like Halifax, where honestly it costs more to rent than Toronto in the safer parts of the city. It's insane. It's insane. To be a lawyer in today's time and struggling to eat, which objectively you would be, unless again you're very well connected and that situation is applicable to your lifestyle. But if you're not, to be a lawyer and be starving, whoa. That's not, I don't think those of us that are self-made, I don't think that's the scenario we were dreaming of. And another thing I want to point out, and by the way, in-house salaries are going to be, if you're in-house at like a prestigious shop, like an international firm, something like that, or not firm, business, they're going to be more in line with the larger businesses, okay? So those are not necessarily less. I had a few in-house stints in my life where I was making actually objectively more than my colleagues at the larger firms, despite having a much better work-life balance. Okay, so we talked about salaries on the ZSA guide. One thing I wanted to highlight that's even more dystopian, yes, it's true, but hey, you came here for the truth, and I hope you click subscribe and stick around for the truth, because this channel is, you know, going to focus a lot more like lifestyle, real lifestyle content, kind of rebranding a little bit. I'm sure you've seen all the videos. The channel looks very different than it did a month ago, I'll say that. But the individuals reporting their income to ZSA, if we peel back some psychological layers there, I feel personally are going to be individuals that are maybe on the higher end of income than actually reality holds. For example, what do I mean? I think somebody reporting their income, it's the same as people that leave reviews, right? You're either going to be crazy happy or crazy disappointed. Very few people are going to take the time to leave a review to be like, it was okay. It was a good meal. People are going to be either like, best place ever, make sure you go there, or there was a roach in the spaghetti. So same thing when it comes to the incomes. I feel like there'll be a few disgruntled people sharing their income on ZSA. I guess disgruntled is not the right word, but I mean, it is the right word, but I don't know how politically correct the word is. But they're going to be, I think individuals overall will lean on the side of being proud of what they're making, because we're talking about money. And usually you wouldn't necessarily talk about that subject. You wouldn't, you know, hold a camera to your face and talk about it unless you're proud of what you're talking about. So I feel those incomes as telling a picture as they paint as to the current, you know, socioeconomic picture of the average lawyer in Canada. I feel they're actually even inflated. I know lawyers that at small firms, because the small firms set an average of 90, right? I personally think the average at the small firm is around 50 to 60, personally, based on like dozens of connections and conversations. If it goes a lot lower than that, I'm talking average. I've had colleagues that were proposed, you know, a $30,000 salary at a small firm without health insurance, or if you want health insurance, $20,000. It's like about $2 a month. Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it, because there's another hungry person behind the door. And the employers know that, and I'm not saying necessarily that the employers are out there to get you and to exploit. That's not the angle. The employers are realistically struggling as well. At this point in the economy, I don't know what the point is, because on the flip side of being a small law firm employee is going to be the fact that there's a small law firm owner. I don't know what the point is of being a small law firm owner. I wouldn't do it. The money just isn't there, at least the way I'd like it to be. So it's a very different reality than you see online. In the US, it's different. I went to school in the US for undergrad. I went to the best women's school in the world, actually, Wellesley College. So a lot of my cohort went on to go to law schools in the US, like a very famous Wellesley alum you might know, Hillary Clinton, went to Wellesley, then went to Yale. The numbers are different there, and they don't have articling, so it's a lot more in your pocket. Anyways, I'll wrap this video up there. Thank you so much for watching. Give this video a big thumbs up, and I'll see you on the next one. And also leave a comment. What real lawyer topic would you like me to dig into next? And if you heard any screamings in the background, ignore them. I'm currently living on a golf course in Mauritius.